interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
So if someone told me that I was going to leave my 5 kids and go into some closed secret society of polygamy, I would have told them that they were high. There was no way that I had a lot to do at home and that I would never, ever leave my children to go work in a close secretive society, kind of like polygamy. But when I found out what was going on, when I got a phone call that said, hey, my little sister cannot leave, my dad is keeping her trapped, and she's 12 years old, I have a 12-year-old, I knew that once I had seen what was going on in the Kingston clan, I couldn't unsee it. And unfortunately, that little girl took her own life because there was no way out for her. And I thought there's got to be a way out. And in my naivety, I thought that maybe these people these polygamous groups the women in them didn't know how to work the system. They'd grown up in this closed society. And so they didn't know what the outside world was really like. These are really, really sharp women. And I found out that society was not helping these people that needed to be helped.
And when you're saying closed society, would people use a different term for that, or the word that kind of pops in my head is cult?
Yeah, religious extremism.
Okay,
a cult like, and you got to. When I started this in 2014, it was very, very difficult to get into these communities. There's been a lot of work that's been done, and a lot of work that was done before us. But it's a little bit easier to get into some of there's a lot more talk. There's been a lot more media. There's been a lot of really great work that's been done. But in 2014, people weren't talking.
But you got to remember, I like using the word secretive society because they're secret. Nobody wants to know they're there. They're out in the world. They're your neighbors. They're doing all these different things. They're hurting children, and nobody wants them to know that they're there. But when you're working, it's just like in law enforcement. You're working sources, you're working snitches, you're working whoever. Tawni did the same thing. Tawni had to go into an area cold and develop all of her own sources through trust and through relationships. And I mean, a lot of those relationships have lasted now nearly 10 years. And it's all because of the way Tawni treats them compared to the way that these women and men are treated in these cults, these polygamous organizations, whatever you want to call it, these sick and twisted people. And a lot of them are just looking for some help.
And I found that, I thought that I would have pushback from the community, from the cult leaders themselves, from the true diehard believers. I expected that kind of pushback. I did not expect the pushback that I got from nonprofit organizations, from law enforcement, from people who said that they were helping. Because I really thought we'd get into this boat and sing Kumbaya. I had something to offer that was going to help. And it just didn't play that way, which was good. Because then I thought, fine, I went to the source. I went down and I did basically what I had seen Matt do with community policing. I went into the sources, and that's where the real information was anyway. So it was truly a blessing.
Now, do you think that the pushback from like law enforcement was that they just were not prioritizing it or not understanding, hey, there are actual crimes going on. This is not a group of adults, doing their own thing or having their own religion or beliefs or whatever. Do you think that was some of the pushback, or did they just verbatim tell you exactly why they?
Okay, Matt has his own say about it, and we will because this is why this became a team and joint effort. I felt like they didn't want, not my kid, not my city, not me, but I'm like, how can this all be going on and you not know? So I was kind of like the outsider looking at law enforcement saying, why don't you have someone that only works polygamy? Why don't we have a team of people? I still am asking this question, by the way. Why is this not prioritized when so many crimes and so much pain is going on? So I actually asked Matt that question. So he reached out to his law enforcement contacts there in Utah. And I actually went in and did like a little briefing and said, okay, these are the 7 brothers in charge. I'm talking Kingston Group right now. This is what's happening. And I felt I'm still having a hard time with this. How could they not know what's going on in their own city after there's been publicity and stuff about this, but it felt like they genuinely did not understand exactly what was happening.
That's very polite way. Public corruption is public corruption. I mean, there's corruption in every aspect of everything. When it comes to law enforcement fighting against polygamy, there's corruption, because polygamy, there's a lot of money in polygamy. And so when you have an AG taking a payoff, directing investigations away from different things, then you're going to have there's you forget this allegedly stuff. There's no allegedly. Tawni is very allegedly because she's smart. Me, nah. He's on the take. He was taking money. He's doing all these different things, but he's focusing the direction of investigations to go other places. When you cancel 93 search warrants the day of the warrants were going to be hit for no reason, just a phone call, we're done, we're not doing this. It's like, oh, well, what's going on here? And that's what we got to in the secrets of polygamy. We got to showing the corruption side of it. We got to showing how much power these groups have because of the money that they bring in.
Well, and it wasn't long before we started airing some of this stuff that there's a Washakie crime was taking place where the Kingstons were making fake biofuels, and it was a $500 million scheme against the government. And so, to the U.S. government's, to their credit, they did start looking into that.
Oh, it's just two agents' credit, an agent with the IRS and another agent. They got together and said there's something going on here, and they did it.
And what was so exciting, though, is that some of their witnesses would come to me and say, should we be talking to the government? Because there's so much, distrust. And it was so amazing to have Matt be able to talk to some of these witnesses and say, this is walking through it. This is what's going to happen. And I'm just so proud of the ones that actually stood up and spoke their truth.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people fully understand what it's like to be raised in a tight circle, or even like a subculture, or even neighborhood, where you're kind of taught from the elders, the aunts, uncles, parents, grandparents, don't trust the government, don't trust the police, the feds, fill in the blank, whatever the agency is. And if you're ingrained in that at a young age, and as you get older and you become an adult, or even, late teens, you're trying to figure out your way in the world. And then when things are happening, when crimes are occurring to you, be it, violence, that sort of thing, oftentimes the victims won't just pick up a phone and call 911, which is one of the most ignorant things that officers or detectives can think or say in reference to, well, why didn't you just call 911? Why didn't you call the police if you knew this was going on? And I do think that's one of the mindsets a lot of instructors and detectives have tried to do dealing with human trafficking. Across the country, there's a large push against that, like, hey, you got to understand, when people are being victimized and they're in a culture like this, they're not just going to pick up the phone. And then when you do actually approach them from law enforcement, they're so used to either being told that they're going to end up in jail, or that the government, and maybe in this case, and I'll let y'all explain, but maybe in this case, that the government somehow is against them on religious beliefs and political corruption. But is that part of the indoctrination that they have in the? And when we say Kingston Family, for the listeners, we're gonna talk about them a little bit more in depth. But we're talking about a collective going back till the 30s, I think, maybe, or even.
It was 1935 that Eldon Kingston went ahead and broke off from the mainstream polygamists and did his own thing, because there was a vie for power. And the people went with John Y. Barlow, which ended up being an FLDS prophet. And Eldon Kingston said, screw that. God came to me 3 months ago, and I'm supposed to do my own church. So 1935.
Real quick, you hit a lot of different things there. And let's go back to why wouldn't they call 911? Well, first of all, their phones are monitored. A lot of the kids can't even get the phones. And so there's that. But if you go back in time, the whole anti-government, sovereign citizen, militia movement is what these guys are. Basically, the Kingstons or the FLDS or the AUB, the LeBarons, whoever you want to talk about, they all go back to this hardcore sovereign citizen mentality that this is Zion. This is our land. This is our country. And the government isn't going to come in, and we're going to do everything we can to fight against the government. Now, as police officers, when we come across these guys with their car and their license plates and their stickers and all this other garbage, we know it's a fight on our hand. But with the Kingstons or any of these other polygamous groups, it's done so secretive that people don't even see it because they don't have the license plates. They don't have the stickers. They don't have any of this stuff. But they have in church saying, we are Zion. We are God's chosen people. We are better than everybody else in this world, and we will do what we have to do to survive. And luckily, what Tawni was able to do was hear that and then go, wait a minute. That sounds like the white supremacist stuff and the sovereign stuff that we've been working for years now. And we brought these two mentalities together. And it's like, holy cow, Tawni, you just uncovered the biggest sovereign citizen movement there is. And that is the Kingstons and the FLDS.
Okay, but it wasn't that hard when you hear from the pulpit, Hitler had it right. He just didn't do it with the priesthood. I mean, that's pretty much black and white in your face. It wasn't like, didn't take a rocket science white supremacist expert to figure that out.
Well, that's one of the that was one of the aspects that when I was reading about it and your show and investigation, it's like I didn't know that aspect existed. I saw the word the order, and then of course I revert back to
Robert Matthews.
And it's not, that doesn't have anything to do with the order, even though they're called the order. But even just recently, like I'm talking a teen, and they get married so young that I'm not sure if he's in his early 20s or still in his teens. But he was saying, "Hell, Hitler! Hitler! The order is like Hitler. He had it right." So we have old school prophets, leaders saying this about Hitler, and it's happening still today. So it's not like it's just in their past.
But what you got to add now, go back to the 90s with David Koresh. Koresh was a polygamist. Koresh was about the government coming to get us. We're not going to give in to the government. He was about the weapons and what happened to Koresh. Now we have the Kingstons who are, we have God on our side. We have everything saying that we are the chosen people. We have our own gun manufacturing company, and we have our own ammo manufacturing company. Bring it on. And that's what they're preparing for.
How big of that movement? Like how many members? And when we say the Kingstons, so for everybody's listening, like just think of that as an organization. It's a family name, but it keeps it easy in my mind. Or they also go by the order still, right? Like we just said.
They go by the order, and they go by the Davis County Cooperative. So people, that's also another thing that they do. They just really make it confusing sometimes.
Do everybody a service right now, Tawni. Break it down. How many kids do some of these leaders have? And how many total people you think are in the organization?
Okay. Well, what we know for sure, because I've had great sources, is that Paul has at least 20. Paul is the leader, the man on the watchtower, the prophet of the Kingstons. He has at least 27 wives and over 300 children. So, and some of those wives have 19 children. So they're told to have a baby every year. That it's kind of that's the doctrine, and if it's not official doctrine, it's definitely taught. So they're growing exponentially.
So how many does
we estimate there's probably 10,000 of them, and half of those are children.
How many does Daniel have?
Well, Daniel has 14 wives and over 200 children. So when there's seven brothers that were in charge. One has since died, but between those seven brothers, we estimate there's over 1,000 children.
Now break it down.
Just among the 7 brothers.
We have 5 kids.
That's a lot.
Sometimes it's hard when that birthday month comes around. It's like, oh crud, it's birthday month. We have a weekend that we have all the kids. There's no way in God's green earth that Daniel, Paul, David, any of these Kingston brothers are going to know whose birthday is who, let alone whose name is who. So why are these kids coming into this world?
Yeah.
They're being
I
told-
think, okay, so if you're asking me, like, I don't know a lot about this. My first thought is like, oh, well, you're just building an army.
Mhm.
You're just trying to do your best to have, a future generation. And they're going to do exactly what you say, or at least 80% of them probably will, because you've got them since, birth,
Mhm.
right? Or no?
Yeah. So then let's take off our public citizen, everyday person hat and put on our law enforcement hat. You got public corruption, you have incest, you have child molestation, you have kid porn, you have rapes, you have all these things. And that is why these kids are brought into these organizations, to be molested, to be raped, to be married off to older guys who give the prophet more money, more businesses, more whatever, just to get that 12-year-old wife. And that's all polygamy is.
It's really, really, really frightening. And one of the second leader, Ortel Kingston, would teach in the pure bloodline of Christ. So he would teach that and I'm not going to get too deep into this, but he would teach that it was better, like half sisters and half brothers will marry each other. I have girls that have escaped that said that they were in meetings with their father who said, look around, your brother may be your husband one day. I mean, just things that we cannot even comprehend, and it's happening. And some of my best, I love these people, but they are definitely products of incest, and they don't know anything different because of it. But they teach because of that pure line of Christ. Even there's going to be birth defects, and we know that babies have been, buried in backyards. There's been any kind of documentation of these babies. We have proof. We have proof of this, though it's hard for us to say, though we've never put it on the show.
They won't allow us to use their names.
Well, but the SPLC did, when we showed them some of that proof, they did go ahead and print some of that. So, I mean.
Well, the center labeled them a hate group. So.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you, too.
It's very macabre. Is that how you say that? There's so many things in the Kingstons like that. This cannot be happening. You guys are not. You're not seeing it straight. You were great. Yeah. You were raised in this closed society. This cannot be happening. And it was happening, and my mind was blown.
And that's why nothing gets done, is because people are stuck. There's no way this is going on. No way is a father going to allow his 8-year-old daughter to marry Warren Jeffs. No way in the world is that going to happen.
But that didn't happen. So
no way in the world is a father going to allow his 12-year-old daughter, or I'll go back, 8-year-old daughter to talk on the phone to a prophet and hear all the, hey, how are you today? And all this bull crap talk that Warren Jeffs would do in the grooming process. And then they become 12 when he marries them. No way in the world is a father going to do that. I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But it's happening. And the reason why nobody wants to get involved, in my opinion, why government doesn't get involved was, okay, let's go break it up, just like they did in Texas when they hit it with the raid. Now we got 400 kids. What are we going to do with 400 kids? What are we possibly going to do with over 10,000 kids within the Kingston family when we arrest mom and dad and put them in jail, and now CPS or DCFS has 10,000 kids? What are we going to do with them all?
Yeah, I don't know. I can tell you that, and this is mostly in Utah, or have they moved outside of that area?
I mean, they're all over the country, and especially a lot of the Kingstons, they're telling their people to assimilate. They're doctors. We've got so many lawyers and accountants, so that that's what they do. But they have to be called and told by the prophet what they are allowed to be and not be.
I got a buddy that's a police chief in Utah. He knows of members of polygamist groups that are police officers, and as soon as they find out, they're terminated for breaking the law. But they're in law enforcement, they're in the military, they're in government positions, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they have a boat ton of attorneys, they are accountants. They're all these different things. They own casinos in California, they own things in Nevada, in Idaho, in Utah, they come down from Canada.
Well, the restaurant supply. There's a restaurant supply. Standard restaurant supply is across the country. Yep. So, and it's one of the leading restaurant suppliers of restaurants. But they have a garbage company, which was, as soon as I told Matt that, he's like, organized crime. I mean, they have everything.
Concrete companies.
It's really hard to do business in Utah without doing business with the Kingstons, and they are expanding for sure.
Now, are people, again, I'll ask the question, you tell me whether you can answer or not, but people that are getting out of that movement or that organization, is there a common thread that causes them to want out, or is it that someone like an outside influence has to kind of convince them of, hey, this is in your best interest to get out of this movement?
Fortunately or unfortunately, so many times in my experience, it's been a love interest that has gotten some of these kids out. And so I just really feel like love is the most powerful force on earth. And so why wouldn't it be that? But it's always seemed to have somebody loving them, showing them, oh, I can get out. Like one of my absolute favorite girls, she heard someone just had to say, you know, you don't have to stay here. A cousin said, you don't have to stay here. And she's like, I don't. And it was just having just that opened up her mind. And it was 2 weeks later that she was out. So it's not always a love interest, but I would say 80%, would you say?
You know better than I do. I think it's pretty high. I think it's that. And somebody gives them a phone with the internet and they start Googling Warren Jeffs. And it's like, holy cow.
Yeah, now that we're back into the FLDS. It's so confusing. There's so many different sects of religious polygamy. But yeah.
I think you're right. With Kingston's, I think it'd be a love interest. With the FLDS is because with the FLDS, you know, they got to wear the dresses and their hair up and all this other stuff. So it'd be different, more of they find out for themselves. A lot of the girls, I mean, they can't even listen to music. And Tawni, being a country singer, starts talking music with these girls, and they start listening to country songs, and then they start meshing. I
cannot tell you how many girls have left over, you know, a few really well-placed country songs.
Is there a certain category? What's that?
Johnny Cash has saved some lives.
That was going to be my question. What's the number one? Yeah.
Well, there's a song, and I should credit her, and I don't even know. It's leaving is better. Leaving is better than staying, or staying is better than, I don't know. It's one of those songs, but it was written for these polygamous girls to listen to and say, oh wow, staying is better than leaving.
Well, it goes back to anything else.
I have a playlist, Brian. I really do.
Perfect. I need it.
In the skin world.
Yeah,
music is the big. I mean, you go to a show, there's skins everywhere. They're feeling it and everything else. And with these people, it's no different. It's just a different style of music, and their brain is different to where they're seeking answers for what they're going through in their life, and they're tired of doing laundry all day or doing whatever they do.
And the more we get into this, it's like the reason that country songs relate to them. It was about a breakup, a bad breakup. Is that song that I play? Is because it's all the human experience. They're feeling trapped. They feel like they can't be free. And all of a sudden someone's singing their heart. And it's like, oh, wow, I'm not alone.
Yeah, I've always say that people underestimate the power of music, especially like at earlier stages in your life when you're just kind of learning who you are. For a lot of people in a more open neighborhood or society or family, you would be, you know, taking in all these different subcultures and music and movies, and hey, I like this, I don't like that, I like this person, I don't like that person. And I could not imagine what it would be like to live in that bubble, and then all of a sudden someone's playing Johnny Cash for you, or someone's playing a song, you know, about a relationship, or even a song about abuse that is occurring in a relationship. Right. And I think that's the one that a lot of people, when they hear, you know, a song that speaks to them. When I was in the Army, this is a side note, but when I was in the Army, there was a soldier from I'll just say the Midwest. And I mean, he was just very dedicated. That's all he wanted to be, was in the infantry. And he ended up staying in, getting deployed, you know, doing some things. And I just remember his first year in the Army. He was a private, and I was a sergeant or a team leader at the time. But this kid would listen to the song, to the first album of Korn. And if you listen to that first album on there, the lead singer actually like breaks down crying, and some of the songs are personal to this soldier. And I learned later about the abuse that he lived through from his father. to the point where he did not want to ever see his father again or talk to him. But I can remember him like hearing me playing corn from across the little hall there in the barracks, and he was drawn in. Mostly he was a country kid. He was not like a metalhead or punk or hardcore. And he starts to sit in and wants to listen to more and more corn. Now it was good to me, but it really resonated to him. And I always think back to that, like that kind of opened that pathway. And then he and I talked about stuff later, but I bring it back to that, to where if a young person is listening to music and then they're wanting out, oftentimes they're going to need some type of support network or another adult or a couple more adults to kind of help them out of that path. Is this one where when you have contact with people in this organization or this culture, that it becomes easier and easier to talk to them, even though you can't maybe do it through a phone or that sort of thing?
Well, my thing was always face to face, and just hysterical, so fun. Like I have a picture with me and these girls are like, no, don't post it. But that day they told me that they were badass bitches. And I went, oh, I mean, they were ready. And then they would hide because they go, oh my gosh, there's father. And I'm like, yeah, so we're badass bitches. But they really were. Every one of those girls are badass bitches, wouldn't you say, Matt?
Oh, they're good girls.
Yeah. And it was like songs like Casey Musgrave's Follow Your Arrow. That was really good. And even 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by, Simon and Garfunkel. So we have the gamut.
See, what you're saying is, does it take, a lot of people say it takes a village, but you know what? It takes a person who just cares. And so what happened, and this is a crazy thing, is that it's not a day shift job. Tawni did not have a day shift job. It was more of a calling. And when these girls call her 2:00 in the morning, she's in the car going out and helping them with whatever they need, playing the music, talking through things, and then getting them home before father wakes up to go do whatever father does. There's a lot of different things that have to happen in this process. But from my experience, I was just the security guy on Escaping Polygamy. I was a security guy. I was the guy to make sure nobody got hurt. And these girls would go out and see what life is, because
we just had so much fun.
It takes time. It took time.
It wasn't. I never talked about their profit. I wanted them to get wherever they were going to go on their own, because I don't have the fallout of what's going to happen to them. They are the ones that are going to have to walk through that. I just wanted to say, hey, there's different ways. There's different things out there. And in my heart of hearts, I wanted them to leave. But for some, it wasn't the best idea. For some, it's better to stay. I hate to even say that, but the indoctrination runs so deep that coming out into a world they were never prepared for is tough.
It's like that 21-year-old that gets his first drink of alcohol and now he's an alcoholic. And that's how some of these people are. And
I feel I get so passionate about it. So I hope that I'm not over speaking or whatever, but not everything inside these communities is bad either. When they come out, I'm like, okay, the way you were taught to eat, that's good. Let's not do McDonald's every day. Just things that they think that are so outside and worldly, they want to embrace, and it's not necessarily good for them. Much more hard, like sex and drugs. We have those kind of problems too.
Yeah. That was going to be one of the things I was going to ask. Once they get kind of out of that bubble, how do you kind of temper that then? I mean, not that you're responsible for their future, but
I felt responsible.
Okay.
I felt so responsible until I'm like, okay, but by whose standards are we setting these kids up? I had my kids from puppies, from little babies. So maybe it's very tricky, but I do take personal responsibility, even though I have no responsibility over personal actions. But Brian, I will tell you that the ones that have someone holding their hands are much better off than the ones that just leave and get out or have been kicked out, because then it's just a free for all. And it was really good. The law enforcement stuff, like some girls were involved in some sexual activity and they're like, is this weird? And I'm like, well, weird is a weird word, but I can tell you that Matt would think that was extreme. So I did have this background that I could draw on that I may not have had myself, but I could draw on his experience as well. And they listened. So many times they just listened, and it's good. It's good.
It's interesting because, and I think Matt and I've talked about this in the past, but when anyone starts to cooperate or break out of either a gang, neo-Nazi organization, cult, when they break out like that, and you do see them start to change, and they're, the old term used to be handler, in law enforcement, this informant's handler. I never really liked that. But my personal experience, I would see gang members as what we called flip. Like once we flip them and they start to cooperate and they get out of that realm and start to do their own thing, a lot of the guys would still keep in touch. Mm-hmm. And so that was always cool. And I always had to wait for them to contact me because I don't always know what's going on 5 months down the road or whatever. And if I contact them, they may be like, hey, you can't do that. Like now I got to answer questions of why this dude's calling me or texting me or whatever, swinging by work or whatever. I'm the type though that I always want to keep in touch with people. And so it was hard for me to do that. And then I would run across people randomly at times. And I was always glad to see that. And I'd always tell them, like, you contact me, you keep in touch. And the ones who did obviously had a higher success rate. And they would get jammed up from time to time, or they would. One guy contacted me some years back during a lot of the BLM riots and stuff. And he just said, hey, you got to help me today because I don't feel good. I feel like hurting some people and I feel like hurting some cops, So I'm like, man, I'll walk outside of my office, sit on a picnic table and talk to him on the phone for about 45 minutes to get him to come down, de-escalate.
It's exactly that this is why I think that it feels so religious polygamy is so out there, but it's so not. It's this human experience that you're just describing. And I'm so grateful for your work because that's how we change the world. It's just really one life at a time. And it really is just loving each other. We really are. I get in trouble for this a little bit. So I always say we've got to care about each other, but it really is love. Like people are like, that's too trite or whatever. But it really is about what you talking to that kid for 45 minutes. What did you change that day? And him having the courage to reach out, it's not like just these heroes. We've had heroes in our own life as well.
Yeah. He was definitely going to go do some really stupid stuff because that was his coping mechanism when he was young. Like you get mad and you pop off. That's what you do. He had enough experiences as he's getting a little bit older to learn to call and to kind of do that. But you're right about love. And I say it in my training courses. I've said it for years and people have laughed at me or I nerd it up and push my glasses up when I say it's about love. But that is the truth. Even when I have gang members, talk and present to agents and officers and they tell them, and they don't say love because that's too, I guess mushy.
Personal.
You have to use care. You have to have someone who cares. That's what I found at the word.
Yeah.
It's not tough enough.
Yeah. And that's what they would say is basically like, like this dude right here is taking care of me better than the gang is, or, that sort of thing. But I do think that the commonality in all of this is the interest, is the ability for outsiders, like people on the outside looking in on the Kingstons, to understand, hey, that people have to, like, we've got to pull people out of this, and mainly because of the destruction within. And I think on the surface, a lot of people hear the word polygamy, and I was the same way. You hear it and you only know kind of that Webster's definition maybe, or like growing up, I would hear like one man may have 3 or 4 or 5 wives. And my dad and other guys would always joke like, why in the world would a man want more than one wife? Like I can't even handle the one I got, or the running jokes like that. So I did not understand out of my own ignorance that whole culture or how that is packaged. And now you've got an organization that is capitalizing on sexual assault felonies, rapes, human trafficking, which brings me to the criminal side of all of this and the investigative side that does lead to, I would hope, some criminal charges in that sense. Now, y'all have got multiple episodes out there, and you've got Secrets of Polygamy and Escaping Polygamy. It's all on A&E. Can you get into some of the criminal charges or people who have been charged? And I know I'm asking you right off the top of your head, but because I think some of the listeners are going to be like, hey, leave people alone. That's their own religious belief, or that's their own prerogative to hate the government, which is pretty common right now. A lot of people are hating the government, but can you get into some of the criminal charges, or at least people on open source who were charged?
Well, what you have, I mean, you have Washakie Renewable Energy. You had Jacob and Isaiah Kingston that were arrested, along with a guy out of Huntington Beach. I mean, straight up organized crime guy out of
allegedly
a straight up organized crime guy out of Turkey. But you have those guys got what, 15, 20 years?
Oh, they got more than that, and they actually prosecuted some of the wives, which was kind of interesting too, and mom. So that's one of the first real. I mean, they did a real good job of that. That
was really good. Then you see,
but they had little kids that were doing the fraud for them. You know, making fake biofuel and filling out the tickets and things for the government. So this is something that's been indoctrinated since children are tiny. Here's
the problem
that was a $500 million fraud scheme that 2020 I think is when that finally was completed.
I mean, they seized Ferraris, Lambos, Bugattis,
Huntington beach house in Huntington Beach.
Yeah, they seized a lot of stuff, but I mean, they're never going to get the 500 million back. We all know that. But here's the problem you have with criminal stuff. I wish I could say that because of Secrets of Polygamy, 30 people were arrested for various charges. But what I found with Secrets of Polygamy is that the corruption that I've heard rumored so much is real. And so in order to break through the corruption, you have to have, first of all, you need a victim. The victims are members of these organizations. They're not going to stand up and talk unless they get out. And then they have to be, just like what we talked about, you have to love them through it. And you have to explain to them, listen, the law enforcement, we don't hate you. We want to take care of you. And to some of these people, that's a lifelong process, just getting people to trust the police.
Brian, we're all over the place, but I have to say this, is that when law enforcement is called, you have to believe in these kids.
Have to.
So many times, the one girl who the sister of the girl who took her own life, she was telling law enforcement there's a suicide pact. She kept calling to where they thought she was crazy, but she wasn't crazy. I mean, we've got to listen. We've got to listen, because so many times when they call, they're like, why would I call? And it took everything inside of them to call law enforcement.
And as I mean, I'm sure you can relate, as retired police officers, I believe that I can talk all the trash in the world I want about police officers because I was one. And I know I'm not going to talk trash, but I'm going to hopefully open people's eyes. And what it is in law enforcement, if we on-view something, we see it. That happened. I know it happened. I'm telling you it happened. I will testify in court that it happened. But if we receive information through whether it's a source or reporting party, my father, who has 16 wives and 300 children, is locking me in a basement. And he wants me to marry my 19-year-old uncle, and I'm only 12. A cop's going to say, do you realize the amount of paperwork that's going to do just to prove this? Are you going to testify? You're a juvenile. Now you open up another door. Now you go and talk to the father, and he's saying, what are you talking about? She has every right to do what she wants to do when she's an adult and all this other stuff. And that's what happens with law enforcement and polygamous groups. So
then it's so confusing. All the wives don't even take their husband's names.
Yeah.
They'll take just a random, I want to be Shirley Adams. Like, I have one girl that likes Bradley Cooper. Guess what her last name is now? She's a fifth wife, and her last name is Cooper. Her husband is a Kingston. She's a Cooper. So it gets really confusing.
But then you have Sam Bateman. The reason, in my opinion, the reason why Sam Bateman was so prosecuted the way he was, he's sitting on 2 50-year sentences. He's never getting out. He's in federal prison. He was just sentenced last month. With Sam, it was a traffic stop up in
Yes.
Flagstaff, and the police officer saw with his own eyes and was then able to say he was hauling a trailer with kids. He had young kids in his truck. What is going on here? And then he started that whole ball rolling. He got the FBI involved. He got all the different organizations involved. And now that Sam Bateman's group has been shut down. But now the problem is who's going to take his place?
We're all over the place. So for your listeners, that's a whole nother group. That's a break off from the FLDS Sam Bateman's group. And so he's been prosecuted just recently, just like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So, but again, it's because the cops saw it.
But he had 9-year-old brides. And for women that can stand around and watch 9-year-olds be
sodomized,
abused, I have all kinds of respect. I know I can't even know, but I want the women to know, if they're watching this, that you have so much power. You have so much power. These men think that they have power over you. No, you have the power, and you can disrupt everything with the power in your heart.
I've watched that traffic stop, the Sam Bateman one, and immediately just from watching it, like I said, I've jotted notes and done some research because any groups like this interest me just because of my background. But when I watched that traffic stop and the initial encounter the officers have with him, right off the bat, when he didn't even want to give his real or his name, when they asked for his name, he doesn't even want to give his name. But the guy's like wearing just regular clothes, looks like he's going to and from work, looks like he could probably just talk himself in and out of any situation. He went into like what we called vapor lock, like you would think he was sitting on a gun or, drugs or had active warrants or whatever. The body language, everything is always the same with people deceiving police during an encounter. He does it textbook like that. And then when they direct their attention to the trailer, and for the listeners, the clips are out there, then they end up checking the trailer and finding the girls. It almost appears like they're hiding in the front part of the trailer when they open the doors. But I think for any law enforcement to see that firsthand is hard to kind of turn your back and go, this is all by choice. And we shouldn't mess with this guy or this organization based on this. I think it's the opposite. I think that's what drives the fuel in most investigations, is like that personal encounter of seeing the victims firsthand and then knowing someone's got to stop this. Now, whether we can take an entire organization out or if we're just going to focus on this individual in front of us and these charges here and then work our way out. And kind of like you said, that's often where an officer contacts, outside agencies or units within their own department and gets them up to speed. Hey, y'all may have never dealt with this before, but you have worked whatever skinhead groups, you've worked, gangs. Is this applicable to what we've got here? Because basically what I'm doing is handing you a human trafficking case. Yeah. And then work it from there.
Yeah. And you know what? There's a lot to that case that
but what we can say is that law enforcement had been made aware of that through family members, through outsiders, and through women that were inside that group. So there's a lot of heroes in that story, but it took law enforcement actually, and we had even been contacted on some of it. Can I say that?
You just did.
Oh, so we had even been before that traffic stop, but it took that very keen law enforcement officer, the patrol officer, to do that. I mean, hats off. We need more of that.
And the guy, the FBI guy in charge, SSA, SS, whatever, they have those nice titles. He's a friend of mine. He called me up and I was asking him about it, and he says he started crying. He goes, "This is the most horrific thing that I've ever seen, ever worked, ever heard of." And that's why we did Secrets of Polygamy, is because, I know that
we had this information before it ever hit. And so somehow we got to get that out there. Okay, go ahead. You finish, because I have something I have to say.
We did Secrets of Polygamy because we wanted people to know. If law enforcement wasn't going to act on it for whatever reason, I'm not here to bash cops, But I understand the different, everything that involves investigations I get. But if they're not going to do it, I wanted the communities that surround these compounds and these people, don't buy guns from Desert Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use A1 disposal. Don't do your shopping at Standard Restaurant. Don't buy from this pawn shop. When you bond out of jail, don't use this company. And I wanted them to be shut down financially because that's what's driving them. And hopefully law enforcement will be able to kick in and do their job, which they have. You know,
and they are.
And they are. And so it's just, sometimes it just takes a little bit to roll down. Laws need to be changed. Arizona just changed the human trafficking law that it's life in prison for anybody that human traffics girls under the age of 15. So I think that things are happening.
And the trickle down from just being able to watch beautiful women have the courage to leave these groups, putting that on TV. We're not seeing the suicide pacts. We're seeing people making pacts that we're going to leave. So
okay. Yeah.
The only way out they thought was death. Now they're like, oh, there is a way out. So they're making pacts in high school. Hey, we're going to leave. And that when I heard that was it was thrilling because that's life changing. And people say, oh, it's just TV. But oh my gosh, it's TV and your podcast. It's a podcast. It's getting that information out there that might spark, oh, I can leave. Oh, this is what's happening. Oh, this is the same as this. Oh, I can just love these people. That's my job, is to support and to love. There is something I can do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you say that about instead of making the suicide pact, they start to leave. And like any organization like that, I'm assuming they're the same as others that I've worked. Once one person leaves and the person sitting to the left or right, you know, either in a meeting or in a car or whatever, and they start, the chatter starts, hey, that person left, whether it's they left good or left bad, either way, they're out of this organization. And so the person who starts to have a little break in their resolve and they say, well, they left, you know, they're still walking the earth. You know, we know they're living out in the county or another state or whatever. And then it starts to break that resolve where maybe other members go, okay, I want to go down that path too. Or they reconnect somewhere. Like I have had gang members get out and then reconnect with people and kind of give them that sales pitch of get out, get a regular job, you know, take care of your girl, take care of your kids, and life gets 10 times better. Like you don't have to worry about going back on the yard. You don't have to worry about getting shot or your kids getting hurt. Like they're almost the best recruiters to get, you know, gang members out is former members. I mean, y'all know that, but I do like hearing that there's starting to be almost a cultural shift like that.
Yeah.
You know,
I just love talking to you because you get it. It's like, it is leaving a gang and it takes that kind of courage. Right. And those are the heroes in these stories, are the ones that actually get out and can show a better way to everyone. And
that's what I think when people hear polygamy, this all of a sudden it goes to, oh, they got a bunch of wives and they're having sex and doing all this crap.
And they are.
But if you take religion out of polygamy, you have a criminal syndicate, you have organized crime, and you have children being raped, molested, and married off to their uncles and half brothers, all criminal. And that's what we need to focus our thoughts on, is forget the religion, take religion out, you know, and that's what I keep telling people, quit focusing on the religious side of it, take it out. You have organized crime at its best.
Yeah. And you and I both look at it very practical, like just do that. And it's funny because there is a mindset among officers and detectives that sometimes is almost like, this is too big for me to deal with. I'll stick with what my assignment is, or I'll stick with, you know, what the crime is reported. Oh, well, I can't really do anything about it. And then they move on. And it's almost like that idea of the inquisitive detective or the really hard charging proactive units and stuff. They almost like crave it. At least I did. And most of the people I worked with, we were always drawn to something, one, that we didn't know a whole lot about, and then two, will this affect, kind of like disrupt the most violence or prevent the most people from getting victimized. So it was always like a new gang to learn about and signs and symbols and all that. But on this end, I would tell listeners, and a lot of them are across the country or in law enforcement, if they think there's anything like that going on in their area, watch Secrets of Polygamy, watch Escape Polygamy. It's basically a textbook on how to get up to speed on this stuff, the same way other shows and documentaries have about gangs or Nazi skinheads or extremist groups. Watch it, start to learn it. And then you can assess, okay, yeah, we probably don't have that going on in our area. Or, hey, y'all mentioned Utah, but then, Texas was thrown out and other states. And just like you said earlier, it doesn't have to be the Kingstons. It can be other organizations, Warren Jeffs and his faction, so to speak, that if this is going on, start to research it, start to get involved, because it all crosses paths. When we talk about human trafficking, I did a conference last week, and that was part of what the conference was doing, was bringing in resources. And it was an audience of about 240 people from all different facets that would either do victim rights services, they would do investigations, prosecutors, the whole gambit. But what I liked is that they were trying to cross wires with gang information, human trafficking organizations, and then how can we be better at what we're doing and better serve the victim?
I think maybe this is something for you and I to talk about, for us to talk about offline here. But tomorrow, Tawni and I are doing a human trafficking conference, a Zoom conference with people up in Washington. We've been to Wisconsin, to the Midwest Gang Investigators Association, to where it wasn't just about the white boy stuff, but it was about polygamy and about how it all ties in together. We've taught for Rimmon, for RISNet, for WISN, for all the intelligence groups, not about the white boy stuff, but about human trafficking and how the religious side of human trafficking kind of gets pushed away because, it's just a religion. No, it's organized crime. So I think you're right. I think the more people that know, the more people that come together, and those aggressive, active, hard-charging police officers, when they hear it, they go, I want to work that. And then you're going to see their production go up. You're going to see overtime hours go up because they're actually interested in what they're doing and they want to learn. And that's what we need.
And we brought Rachel Jeffs, who is Warren Jeffs' daughter. She's helped, so that we bring a real face to some of this stuff. And she's been instrumental in helping, law enforcement see, hey, this is real. So that it's kind of exciting. And it's exciting to talk to you, Brian, that you're getting this crossover, that this is a human issue, not just a polygamy one or a religious one. And it's a criminal issue. And it's just, and we have to mention that Warren Jeffs groups are taking little children from their homes and taking them to North Dakota and different places. So, I mean, this is happening. This is real. And it's easy to say no way, but yes way.
And what I like to tell people, just in the Sam Bateman video, he's pulling the trailer. I tell everybody, if you pull over a truck, usually a Ford F-250, F-350, pulling one of those cargo trailers, the dude's dressed in a plain shirt, long sleeve shirt, and he's kind of looks a little nervous. You better be checking that trailer, because there's probably going to be kids in the back of it. And that's how they're moving their people around, is through those cargo trailers.
And so when you had mentioned Warren Jeffs, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but for a long time I thought he was on the FBI's
he was.
top 10, right?
Yeah.
So with him being involved, you mentioned his relative. That's kind of one of those things too, that if there's like a public enemy number one to be able to attach to the crime, so to speak, to be able to say, hey, study up on Warren Jeffs, understand how vicious this can get and how prolific. Now you mentioned, and I was saying that for listeners to be able to do that if they're not familiar with him, but you had mentioned that they were taking kids and then transporting them to other states.
Yes.
So in something like that, that should be the number one red flag for people in law enforcement or anyone working with them. That's kidnapping. You know what I mean? Like, and then,
there's so many dynamics. So you've got to understand the religion. You've got to educate yourself on it. But those kids want to go because they think it's their salvation. So they're willingly being kidnapped. You've got one parent who has custodial rights to that child, and then you've got members of the church coming in and taking them. And there's already been some adjudicated. So, I mean, we know what's happening. It's not just us saying, this is not just source information. Oh, we know this is happening. Some of this has been adjudicated.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I want all the listeners, you know, if you're interested in it, especially law enforcement, reach out to me, which listeners do. I'll get you in contact with Matt and Tawni if they're available. I don't want to throw it out there just like that, but to be able to get involved, get you some resources, and get some people plugged in, because I know, and we all know it listening, that local law enforcement oftentimes are the feeders for federal or the big badges who can actually start to get things like this brought in as a RICO, a larger investigation. And you've got agents out there who are sitting there wanting a big case. They're wanting to get involved. And sometimes they don't have that background. They don't have that experience. But an officer can get them up to speed, or at least say, hey, we do have this involved. These are our players. And basically, let's sit down at the table and start to collaborate. It's that easy. I want people listening to understand, like, it's not like the movies, at least usually. It's not like in the movies where local law enforcement has a problem with an organization. They contact the FBI, and then the FBI either tells them they don't want to work it, or they sit in a room and then get the information and steal it. And then there's all this infighting. That really was not my experience and a lot of other people's experiences. I'm not saying that doesn't happen sometimes, but just take the initiative. If stuff like this is going on in your area, to understand the human trafficking aspect at a bare minimum.
And I can tell you, North Dakota, the people we worked with, the sheriffs that we worked with in North Dakota, the Homeland Security we worked in North Dakota, amazing.
Well, CPS,
amazing.
Who called? I mean,
CPS in North Dakota.
They want to be prepared for this kind of thing.
It was amazing. And just because you're in Nebraska, don't think you don't have it, because you do. Just because you're in Wyoming, don't think it because you do. Montana has a huge compound. Iowa, all these different places. They have polygamy. Is just not a Utah, Idaho thing or Arizona thing. It's everywhere.
Okay. That was what's that?
They were, the Kingstons, you know, had sections in Belize even, which was, and they had public corruption going on in Belize. They had their fingers over there. So it's just their tentacles, I should say, over there. This is a wide ranging problem, and I'm glad that we're paying attention.
Now, for people listening, is there a way or a path they can contact you if they want to directly, or do y'all stay away from that?
Oh my gosh, we stay away from it, and then we don't.
I figured that.
We like have this love-hate thing with it because we actually hate it. But please reach out to us, because you don't have to start from scratch. So much of this legwork, like I felt like I started from scratch, and people had done work before me. And so please, I want to share what I have for you too.
Yeah, I mean,
what we've collectively been able to do. Mm-hmm. And we'll ask the sources if we can share or not share. It's a careful walk, but we absolutely can help you. I
mean, hit us up on whatever, all the social media stuff, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And we'll see what happens.
We just want to do the work. We hate that part of all of that, but it's very necessary.
Yeah. I'll put the links in when I drop this episode, which will probably be a little bit later today. And for people listening, reach out. The presentations, I think, help. I mean, immensely. And like you mentioned earlier, doing stuff remote, Zoom, that sort of thing. Just for people that are dealing with this in their jurisdictions or their areas, just kind of problem solve and think, how can I get this information? How can I get kind of to the root cause of it? So I appreciate y'all jumping on. I know I'm fortunate because we get to talk quite a bit through, texting and that sort of thing, and then jumping on. You all have been on my show before, back on episode 29 for the listeners. If Matt and Tawni sound familiar to you, there's a whole nother side of their life with doing undercover work within neo-Nazi groups and white supremacist groups. They've got a book, The Hate Next Door, absolutely incredible. So go back, listen to episode 29 if you did miss it, and they get in depth with those investigations in that realm. And I think we're probably going to have to come back and do another episode down the line and kind of cross some paths and get into some story time that we don't always get to get into on each episode.
Hey, anytime.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks for your work, Brian.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
All right. Disruptors out.